Hello there. Welcome to my website today. Get a number of emails after my weekly radio programs, and of course, you can imagine the number of concerned Americans that are involved in the debate over Judge Kavanaugh, whether or not he will go to the U.S. Supreme Court. I want to put my thoughts on record before the vote. We all feel a little differently. I'm concerned about the polarization of the debate. It seems like if you're a Democrat, you're against Kavanaugh. If you're a Republican, you're for Kavanaugh. Right versus left. The divisions are so strong to get depending on your point of persuasion. And I don't see any neutral analysis. I don't care who you are, what politician you are, whether you like Ronald Reagan, whether you like Bill Clinton, whoever you liked. You can go back in history and find that maybe you agree with them 2/3 of the time, but you disagree with them 1/3 of the time. And that's kind of how I feel in this Kavanaugh matter. And quite frankly, it's not just Kavanaugh. It's most of the major issues that come up in Congress. There is no absolutes, quite frankly, I found in my some 28 years as an elected official in Louisiana and observing and writing about these issues here for the last 20 years. It's just not all black and white. It's just not all cut and dried. There are many combinations. So many people in the Kavanaugh debate are focused on what happened at the hearings with Dr. Ford, who you believe. And I'm not sure who's telling the truth. It looked like Ms. Ford, Dr. Ford, was very believable, very credible. I don't think her motives are questionable. I'm not sure she remembered all the details and how it related right to Kavanaugh. Don't think that Judge Kavanaugh handled himself very well. He got into some partisan views, but I'll give him a little bit of the break under the tremendous pressure he was under. Here he thought he was going to go right through with his nomination. He'd been on the bench for some time, and he'd been viciously attacked. So I think he way overreacted. If I were advising him, I'd have told him to handle his commentary differently. The question now is demeanor. Does he have the demeanor to be a federal judge? But the point I want to make here to you today is I would have never gotten that far until some other basic questions would have been answered. I followed Judge Kavanaugh on the Court of Appeals for a number of years. I follow a number of these courts of appeals because actually they often make the law. Many important cases never get to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court only takes about 60 cases a year. And there are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of cases out there that have dramatic impact on your life and my life. And so what happens in the courts of appeals are very important to each and every one of us. I happen to have the unfortunate opportunity, unfortunately, of living down in the 5th Congressional, or the 5th District, the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals, Federal Court of Appeals. They're located in New Orleans and make up Texas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And they are just generally the most incompetent court of appeals in America. They're overturned more so by the Supreme Court than any other district in the country. And I've just seen some outrageous opinions involving basic individual rights that have been stomped on by the 5th Circuit out of New Orleans. So I pay attention to these courts all over the country. And before we get to the demeanor and the questions and he said, she said, I would have liked for the senators to ask some basic questions about the opinions that Judge Kavanaugh has written. He has written a number of opinions that invade your privacy and my privacy, and that concerns me. And I would have liked to have quizzed him. If I'd been on the U.S. Senate, I would have quizzed him at length about the decisions he made. You go back and see is that Judge Kavanaugh has no problem with the massive gathering of all your telephone records, your emails. If any government agency says, well, we need it for national security, then Kavanaugh puts a rubber stamp on it. And so therefore, he has issued rulings and voted in court cases to allow massive gathering of millions and millions of telephone logs. No indication that the person or the thousands of people they're gathering this information from has anything to do with terrorism or undermining national security. But the federal government just says, well, we got to have this for national security. And the court that Kavanaugh has been on and him personally said, okay, you get it, anything you want. We don't care too much about the right of privacy of an individual. If it's national security, you get it. And I think that that standard has been way overused. Ron Paul, the senator, Republican, strong conservative Republican senator from Kentucky, has been very aggressive in undermining and pushing to stop this violation of your privacy and my privacy. And I think that whether it's phone records or any other records or any information, just saying, well, it's for national security purposes, there needs to be some guidelines. If you're going to say national security, go in specifically and give the details of that. Let's just don't rubber stamp it to allow massive gathering of information involving everything about you. All your phone records, your emails, your phone calls. Kavanaugh thinks if there's a national security issue, and if that's just hollered, that the government has the right to gather all that information. That's too broad, way too broad. So before I ever got to the point, and I'm responding to many emails I got after last week's show, we talked about this whole issue, saying, well, Brown, how would you vote? What position would you take? I'm an independent. I've registered independent. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I don't have a dog in this fight from a political point of view. What I do, the dog I do have in this fight is my right to privacy that I think has been way overextended by the government. And that hasn't been answered. And so that's my answer, that we need a lot more information about, is this judge going to be a secrecy freak and grabbing all your information and invading your privacy? If he is, then he shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. And those questions haven't been answered. They haven't been answered. They haven't been asked. And the Senate has not done their job, quite frankly, in asking these very important questions. I blame the Senate for not taking a more aggressive view of any nominee. And that just hasn't been done. Hey, glad you watched my website this week. Hope you listen to our radio show. Talk to you next week. Take care.